Hello and welcome to Georgia Bulldogs Live here on the Georgia Voice of College Football. I am your host, Matt Green, and tonight we have our newest co-host here at the Voice of College Football. Is about to graduate from the University of Georgia, current sports editor of the Red and Black, Bo Underwood. Bo, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be joining this show, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're a little bit younger than me, but I'll try not to let that
Not much.
affect me. I'll be insecure about it or anything.
Not that much.
So you were at Kirby's press conference today,
I
right?
was there. Yes. Kirby's
Well,
press
let's
conference.
let me tell me. Oh, let's first before I get into that, let's do our housekeeping here. I appreciate everyone who's tuning in, watching the show. Everyone who's tuning in live. Please like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. You got something to say? Write in the comments, and we might shout you out here on the show. You can follow me at Matt_W_Green. And Bo, what's your handle? Shout out to the
I
people.
actually just added it. It's Bo Underwood _.
There you go.
Yeah, like right before we went live, I was like, oh, I should have that on there.
Yeah, there you go, man. You want to argue sports? Yeah, Bo says something really dumb that you disagree with. Just go come at him.
I have
Let's
a
see
lot
what
of time
happens.
on my hands. I love typing with strangers online, man. I'll do it.
That's what it's all about. Keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
And then get your business, product, or service, or personal brand to the next level. Partner with the Voice of College Football. Contact us at sponsorships@vocfb.com. So let's get started. So it's April Fool's Day. But how do you feel about April Fool's Day?
I haven't actually fallen for an April Fool's joke. I feel like in a while. It's 2025, man. I'm not gonna judge anybody. Yeah, I probably saw at least one or two things today where my initial reaction was like, what? But no, I think that since the second I woke up today, I was like, everything I see, I'm going to take with a grain of salt. I had 3 texts from my friends who were like, did you see this? Did you see this? And then I get 10 minutes later, they're like, oh, wait, no, never mind. It was April Fool's. I'm like, dude, you're an adult and you fell for April Fool's. I get if it's really obvious, but I really don't think that somebody got me with a silly post on social media for April Fool's Day since I was a child. So I don't know. I like as a society that we don't really care that much. I feel like we don't really care as much about April Fool's Day anymore, and I don't think that's the worst thing. I don't know. What do you how do you feel about this day?
Yeah, a lot of misinformation going on the internet these days. So you got to be vigilant already,
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And sorry, no, I feel like that's probably what really killed it. Is you have on the internet now. You have on Twitter. You have NBA Centel and butt crack sports tweeting out here just constant lies and misinformation all the time. It's every day is April Fool's Day when you go on Twitter now. So it's the purpose is defeated, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The only ones I remember kind of thinking were funny was I think Anthony Davis said he was gonna shave his eyebrow or something, but never did. Yeah. Michael Strahan said he was gonna fix his gap in his teeth or something, but it was an April Fool's joke.
I do remember because Anthony Davis, I'm pretty sure he posted a video of his eyebrows, and it was waxed. It was the unibrow was done, and then it just later on he was like, no, I was kidding. But I do remember that one. I was like, wait, did he actually
Yeah. Those are a couple. I think I saw one today. It was Carson Beck's transferring back to Georgia.
See, I saw that and I was like, if anyone saw that and was like, oh no way, I'm just come on, man.
Yeah,
look at the count.
I'm with you, man. But yeah, April Fool's. I'm not a huge April Fool's guy. But I felt April 1st. I felt the need to address it. But yeah. So let's get to the press conference. So you were at Kirby's press conference today. So I know there was something about the house settlement. I think that Kirby said, but you got some information about that today, right?
Yeah. So if you're not aware, this has been
talk to me about I'm a child.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, but also my knowledge of this is not exactly crazy either. But from what I understand, there is a proposed settlement between the House and the NCAA, everyone's favorite company. where basically the proposed agreement is that, among other things, it would institute like a revenue sharing system with NIL to where I think players can make like if you're at the right program, you can make like 20 mil. I might have seen some wrong numbers there, but I think that's what it is.
Do you know if there's anything in there like incentivizing when players have been at a school for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years?
I don't know all of the specific terms with the NIL settlements, but I do know that above all, the big thing is that there's like a revenue sharing model with it, which currently does not exist. Right now, NIL is just like schools have their own collectives and everything, but other than that, it's kind of just willy-nilly, every man for himself. And I think this is kind of a response to that, trying to get ahead of all those collectives that are coming out. And then the other thing that I think Kirby spent a little bit more time talking about today was there's a proposal that would it would make the football roster limit 105 players and 105 scholarship players, where right now the roster limit is, I think, upwards of 125. There's no real number, but that's where it sits at. It's about 125, and you can have 85 scholarships. So that's about 40 walk-on spots. And this would, in FBS football, it would just do away with walk-ons entirely. It would just give you 105 scholarships. And yeah, I don't think anybody is super anybody that I've heard talk about this is very in favor of it. It was interesting to hear Kirby talk about it because, you know, he's always been very opinionated about how much college athletics are changing and you know, NIL, the transfer portal, everything. I mean, every press conference you hear him talk about how it's killing kids' passion for the game and everything like that. And then the other guy that I thought was cool.
Before you move on from that, I think I understand, you know, just kind of the human aspect to it, and it's like, you know, there's all these walk-ons that you know love the university and want to play and all that. I think just in the era we're in, though, I think you have to put some sort of, you know, rules on it because you've seen these schools. I don't know who it was a couple years ago, like. Dude just chose to join a recruiting class as a walk-on because the collective was going to pay for whatever, you know? So it's like, if you're finding ways around the 85 scholarship limit because you can just pay players tuition or something like that, it's like, that's definitely where the sport is going to go, you know? Like I said, when the NIL thing first started, it was like, so what's preventing, you know, Auburn from having the Yellowwood player of the game makes $100,000. You know what I mean? I'm sure there could be rules against something like that, but I think you have to make some sort of rule because you're seeing, like, there was like, I think it was Santana Moss back in the day that Miami found a way for him when they were on probation to give him like he was a walk-on on the football team, but he had a scholarship on the track team, something like that. So, you know, if you're going to do that, you know, more power to you, but just paying a dude's tuition to kind of work your way around the scholarship limit, I think you have to kind of put a hard cap on it in some way. And it is 20 additional scholarship players. So it's like, you know, does Stetson still get a spot if it's 105 players? Because this is the one thing people forget. Stetson was a scholarship player for like 4 years, you know? He probably doesn't get that initial scholarship in 2015 or 2016, whenever it was, or the initial walk-on, I should say. But maybe he's one of those 20 like kind of preferred walk-ons that they kind of chose, and maybe those guys are going to be, you know, are you really going to get, you know, 20 more 4-star recruits in a class, or are you going to get some of those 2-stars that are essentially preferred walk-ons, but now they're just going to get a scholarship from day one instead of having to maybe earn it 2 or 3 years down the road?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like you said, it's just weird because like the meaning of a scholarship athlete has totally changed versus, you know, back then it was like you play on the football team and everything. You're not allowed to make a dime, but your tuition is paid for, and that's supposed to be good enough. But now it's, you know, you can actually make money and everything. So it's like, what is a scholarship athlete when there's just so much more earning potential there now? But I don't know. Like it was interesting to hear a guy like, you know, they asked Terrell Foster about this same question, and like a lot of other guys, I think some of the reporters kind of tried it with a couple other players. They tried it with Micah Morris. They tried to ask him about this thing, and he was like, Micah Morris has been a scholarship guy his whole career. So he's like, I I don't really think about it that much. I mean, we're trying to get better in the spring, but Terrell Foster was pretty candid about like, yeah, it would suck like if they just got rid of walk-ons. I mean, like so I don't know. The hearing is April 7th, and I know you and I could spend hours trying to research every possible detail of this proposed settlement and every stipulation that it has, but I don't know. College sports have just kind of this seems like an attempt to kind of put the genie back in the bottle a little bit with how much things have gone off the rails, and I'm not sure if I think that's going to work. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I don't know. Once you can start getting paid by, local car dealerships or whoever, whatever credit union or that you've seen guys doing Zaxby's commercials. Once you've started doing that, I don't know how you can just say, no, that's illegal now. Like you pass a rule and a dude's got a contract that he's already signed with a company or something like that. So I'm not sure how you stop that. But I would love to see something that, does kind of, because these guys should have some sort of revenue sharing in this whole billion-dollar industry. You know what I mean? So I definitely understand that. But if they can do something about kind of incentivizing, like kind of how the NBA tries to do, how you're a max player, but your max can be higher if you stay with that team that drafted you, kind of.
Do you imagine a college sports supermax? Like how messed up that would be. Yeah. NBA, it's like you have to play with NBA. It's like you have to play with your team for like 9 years or something. I think it is, or like 7 years, like whatever. And then college, it's like you didn't transfer after your sophomore year, you get the supermax. Like,
yeah, I mean, whatever it takes, because I think there's something to just the free agency every single year. Like the contracts are definitely have to be on the horizon. Like at some point, guys are getting 2-3 year deals or something like that, or with an option for a fourth or something.
I think I've been trying to read it. I think the proposal is that like the absolute most you can pay all of your players total is like $20.5 million. And that's if you're like a 5-star blue chip program. And then it's like, it's up to those schools like Georgia, Georgia would presumably pay the $20.5 million. And I don't know, it would be distributed that way, but I'm not sure. Like it's pretty confusing. Honestly,
yeah, and that's
we're
definitely
just gonna have to see what they rule in a week from now.
And college football teams are not going to find a way around that $20.5 million cap. Of course, there would be no money under the table.
They'll be very obedient for sure.
They already have the infrastructure. This is what happens with the sport for however many decades. The under the table money, all that stuff still exists, I'm sure. But what else? Would you have anything else about the House settlement, or what else did you take from the press conference?
I'd say that was pretty much it about the House settlement. Everyone else either kind of dodged the question or was confused by it. But there were 9 players available today, and a lot of different. I mean, like Bo Gardner, long snapper, was available. Peyton Woodring, got to hear him talk. Zachariah Branch. So it was pretty cool. I would say another thing that I noticed from the presser that, I mean, I asked Kirby this question because I heard him talk about this last week, but he's spent, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this more in a second in terms of the whole team, but Kirby Smart, as a former defensive back himself, is notoriously like more hard on the safeties than any other position. And 2 weeks ago, he said that they were behind at safety because, you have Malachi Starks and Dan Jackson, 2 guys who probably have recorded 1,000 career snaps each, both of them moving on to the NFL. So that's that's years of production that you have to replace. Luckily, they have KJ Bolden in there who, really impressive freshman year, super talented guy, but that's only one known commodity you have in the entire safety room. So I asked him about Zion Branch, Adrian Maddox, and Jaden Harris, the three transfer safeties. Excuse me, I can't talk. And I was like, yeah, what have you seen out of them from this spring? And he was like, well, I've seen flashes, but flashes don't win you football games. And he kind of left it at that. But like I took that as him still being pretty concerned about the back end of this secondary. So could definitely be something to monitor, because replacing Malachi Starks and Dan Jackson, those are two damn good dogs, or if you want to call them that. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be growing pains in that secondary this year, man.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, you have Everett and Daniel Harris back at the corner spots, and Aguero, everyone seems to be excited about at the star position, even though he's, had his injuries in his first 2 years on campus, but he's looked good at times.
Yeah, he was there today. Talk for a little bit.
Another guy that was available to the media, but I would have to think, you brought in 3 guys at that safety position. One of them is going to end up starting. It's probably not going to be who would it even be? Ja'Cory Thomas?
Ja'Cory Thomas is the only other one who's, played snaps on this team, really.
In the secondary.
I think so. At safety.
So that it's most likely going to be.
Mello Jones has barely played at all. Andre Evans redshirted last year. They like Kyron Jones a lot. But Kyron Jones was a running back in all of high school, and now they're cross training him at star and safety at the same time. So, how ready can Kyron Jones really be for, real game snaps, as much as they do like him?
That's a good name, though. Did he have a pick 6 a couple years ago, like in garbage time? I want to say Kyron Jones, like a 5-yard pick 6 or something. I feel like I remember that. That's a good name, though, to pull in terms of if it's going to be a guy that was already on campus. That feels like one of the only options at safety. It's most likely going to be one of those transfers. Are you looking that up?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he had a pick 6 against UT Martin last year.
There you go. I know it was like 10 yards, like a 5-yard. It was like it was a super short one.
Yeah, he's really one of the guys that I think you're right. It's if none of the 3 transfer guys are ready to go, obviously Bolden has one of those spots locked down, but the other one could end up being either Kyron Jones or Ja'Cory Thomas, which would not be something I expected in like January, but the way that Kirby Smart has talked, and he could just be, freaking out because he's a football coach, and you always want to ask more out of your guys, but if he's to be believed about this safety room, I don't think any of those 3 transfers are going to be starting in August.
I would be surprised by that. And to your point, I think Richard LeCount, I remember hearing about Kirby being all over Richard LeCount early too. So maybe it is just Kirby in that safety position.
Oh yeah. He's hard on those guys, man.
Yeah, for sure. So first spring scrimmage. Let me get my fancy graphic on the screen here. So first spring scrimmage was this week, and it sounds like the defense got the better of the offense from what most people are saying. The biggest thing I'm kind of taking away, just the more I think about this team, is I'm just really excited about this inside linebacker room. Like, it's just going to be loaded. Like, there's a reason George has become linebacker U in recent years. Like, CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson are definitely the more proven guys there. But I can't hear enough this spring about Chris Cole and Justin Williams. Like, that's all anyone seems to be talking about is those 2 guys, second-year players.
Yeah, no, those guys, I've heard a lot about them too, and they came up a lot last week, and then who did I ask about them this week? Oh, I asked Terrell Foster about them this week too, and he was like, yeah, man, like they're ballers, they're for real. It's like you said. I hate to like gloss over CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson. We can come back to them in a second, because those are the guys. Those are the guys that are going to be really leading this defense this year in the middle. But yeah, the fact that Georgia got both of those guys is something that still doesn't even make a lot of sense to me. Justin Williams was the number 1
and then just stack Zayden Walker in the next class too.
Yeah, Chris Cole's number 3 linebacker. Yeah, then they get Zayden Walker in the next class. So it's like, yeah, like you said, when you're linebacker university, I guess you can do that. But Justin Williams, I heard Kirby last week call him one of the most positive people he's ever been around, and I believe it. Justin Williams was available last week on Tuesday night as well, and like that kid has a smile that just lights the room up. Let me tell you. He just seems like a really high character guy. His teammates love him. They've all raved about how he's been much more vocal this spring and has really been taking extra time to like encourage some of the younger guys. He's a sophomore, but the guys that are even younger than him. So yeah, that should be really cool to look out for this year because they've really talked about he's made leaps and bounds this spring. And then Chris Cole, there's even more like proof of concept there, I would say, because we saw, Justin Williams was a pretty good special teamer last year, but we saw Chris Cole take some pretty meaningful defensive snaps, and he looked really good. They've compared him to Jalen Walker because of his versatility in coverage and as a pass rusher. And like, obviously nobody is Jalen Walker. I really doubt that Georgia loses Jalen Walker and then just has a Jalen Walker clone on their team. I'm not saying I think that, but like the fact that they get these chess pieces at linebacker that they can just move around and use all these different kinds of ways. I'm right with you, man. I can't wait for these inside linebackers.
Yeah, because if you remember 2021 too, after Adam Anderson, got kicked off the team, they were playing three linebackers, like with Channing Tindall and Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean. So I think you're going to see three of these inside linebackers on the field for so many snaps this year.
Yeah. Especially because the edge rotation just isn't as great as it has been. You're losing Jalen Walker was a half edge, half off ball linebacker, I guess is what we'll call him, and then just like a football player. And then you have Michael Williams on the other end is gonna be a top 10 pick or whatever. But this year it's like Quintavious Johnson maybe, and Gabe Harris has been out for the last few months, so we don't really know what he looks like. So they're not going to be able to. I don't know. I don't.
It'll be more of a necessity.
Yeah, they're going to have to rely more on these linebackers to rush the passer, especially because I just don't think they have the guys off the edge that Georgia's kind of been accustomed to having in recent years.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's one of the things I'm worried about for the 2025 team. But in terms of the offense in the scrimmage, did you have anything about the offense takeaways from the scrimmage?
Yeah, I was not at the scrimmage, but I think that the takeaway that I kept hearing was Stockton looked pretty good. Stockton was leading the offense pretty well. This is his fourth spring on the team. It could be his third, but I think it's fourth spring. So he's just leaps and bounds over every. Puglisi I've heard is making a pretty solid push, but I think Stockton is pretty far ahead of everybody else as far as really knowing the system and everything. And the other thing that I've heard that I heard Kirby Smart say a bunch of times today is like, they still can't run the ball apparently. Last year, Georgia, I know they had their injuries along the offensive line, but they returned, I think, 4 starters out of 5 on the offensive line. I think it was only Mims who left, and they were in the hundreds for rushing in the country. And that's been the big, I think their big mantra this whole spring that at least I hear whenever I go to those is like, they want to get much better at running the ball. And then on the other side, they want to get much better at stopping the run. Like this whole spring has been about the run game on both ends. And I think they asked Michael Morris today how he felt like the offensive line played. And he was like, we can play better. I'm paraphrasing, but I think we're just still the run game is gonna have to come along soon at some point rather than later because it can't be as inexplosive as it was last year for much of the season if Georgia wants to really make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you there, and it's inexplicable, honestly, from how this team recruits at the offensive line for it to ever be that bad. Because even the years like 2022 and 2023, like I would not say that those were great run games by any means, but they were effective, and they you had what 2 like 800 yards rushers, I want to say.
Edwards 23, and then 22 McIntosh Kenny McIntosh is one of the most underrated Georgia players of all time, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm with you there. McIntosh was a weapon and definitely out of the backfield, catching the ball too. But he had what, I think like 700-800 yards.
No, I mean, no, they never. I don't know the last 1,000-yard rusher that Georgia has had. It might have been I think Elijah Holyfield and DeAndre Swift both did it in 2019.
That was 2018. So then Swift by himself would have been 2019. So yeah, that's probably the last one.
Maybe that one. 2021. I don't think like Zeus or Cook ever did it. I don't think anybody in 2020 would have done it. Like,
although
it's been a while. I mean,
it definitely has. Although McIntosh, but I think even those, I think like 2023, I think Georgia was like 25th in the country in run offense. It was like it didn't seem great, and it was like we were still top 30 in America.
Yeah, and also because Milton was banged up for so much of that year, and then he came back. Like, do you remember the last like 4 games of 2023 Kendall Milton? Like, he looked like Nick Chubb at certain points.
I do remember breaking a couple touchdown runs. It was Ole Miss, I want to say maybe.
Yeah, he did have a couple of long runs against Ole Miss, and then like I think he had a really good game against Tech too. But like, I remember watching that and being like, dang, I'm kind of sad that we never got to see like this full version of Kendall Milton for more than 5 games. But is there even a Kendall Milton in this running back room?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Nate Frazier has a high upside, but sure. And I think to give McIntosh his credit, I think he had some sort of all-purpose yard stat that was like up there with Percy Harvin and Dexter McCluster.
Yeah. Dude, they would get him though because he was real nice out of the backfield. I mean, that was the thing that was so great about having him and Cook was like, Zamir White was your big back and your bruiser, and Cook and McIntosh were just so far ahead of their years as route runners out of the backfield that like, man, they were that saved Stetson Bennett, I think, more than some people realize.
Yeah, that's true. James Cook was such a mismatch in the past game. But yeah, and I was really excited, even though the offensive line might have its struggles and still unproven, definitely unproven. I thought Trevor Etienne and Frazier was going to be, one of the better running back duos in the SEC in 2025. So, I was as disappointed as Nate Frazier was on his Instagram story when I heard the news.
And that would have been cool to have another year of that.
For sure, because I think Frazier's got high ceiling for sure, and that's another guy you're here. Another thing you're hearing in the spring is Bo Walker is creating a lot of buzz. So with how many injury issues both Robinsons have had in the backfield, like Cash Jones is basically the second most proven guy in that backfield. So Bo Walker, the door could be open for Bo Walker.
It could be. Yeah, it's just tough. Like we just don't really know a whole lot of. I mean, it's hard to say like who did well and who didn't at this scrimmage today because Kirby Smart was just so like up in arms about the whole thing that like I think he said verbatim. He's like, it's like I know you're asking like the question went something like how did the scrimmage go? It was very normal, and he's like we've got a long way to go. And he's like, I know the question was like who did well specifically, but that's not important right now. I just want to make sure that we can like run a play properly or something like that. And like, it didn't sound as harsh as maybe I'm making it sound, but I mean, you can tell that like they're the way that Kirby Smart is talking about this team at this point in the spring versus a couple of years ago, maybe even last year, he's never spoken glowingly of his team in spring, nor should he ever. But this really does sound like the most he's ever been concerned about where his team is at this point in the year compared to the championship standard that he holds them to.
Yeah, because I mean, he is that guy that's just always, demanding perfection or whatever, so it's never good enough, or he's finding the negative, But I talked on here about a month ago that I can't ever remember a more unproven Georgia team like going into a season, especially under Kirby Smart. Like under Kirby, it's like there's at least like 2 or 3 like guys that are getting talked about as being first team All-Americans, you know,
Yeah.
a handful that's like could be first round picks. Like it's really you gotta search. It's like KJ Bolden is honestly like the only guy I can think of.
And he was a freshman last year.
Yeah.
Like you're right though, because like if you go by position groups, like quarterback gonna be a new starter, running back, you know, Frazier, the guy, the freshman second string running back from last year will be back, and then it's, you know, Chauncey Bowens, Dwight Phillips, some guys who haven't really played a whole lot. Receivers, completely new group. Tight ends, you know, you have Delp and Lucky back. Offensive line, you have your entire interior offensive line to replace. You know, they're Drew Bobo and Michael Morris are pretty good options, guys who have played before, but still, like, you know, last year they brought back 4 starters. This year they bring back technically only 1, I think, or maybe 2, depending on what you think Monroe Freeling is. But yeah, like deep edge rushers.
The linebackers are good, but none of them are like being talked about.
That's like it. Corners, you have Everett coming back. You're losing your other guy. You have Humphrey transfer. Like safeties gone, edge rushers gone, interior D line gone. Like, has it ever? I don't think it's been like this. Maybe the last Kirby team that was more unproven than this, like you said, is probably 2016, his first year coaching.
And it's like year 1, you had Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, so you had like a couple studs.
You had all Rick's guys in there. Like, this is interesting. This is not a situation I think we've ever really found ourselves talking about with the Kirby Smart that, you know, we know him to be. You know, the back-to-back national champion, you know, top head coach, top paid coach in college football, Kirby Smart. Like, it's kind of uncharted territory for a guy like that. I don't know that it's just coach speak. Like, and it's especially like you talked about like a KJ Bolden. Like after Malachi Starks' freshman year, it was like if he's exactly as good as he was as a freshman, he'll probably be an All-American. Like KJ Bolden, you're kind of projecting a little bit that like he was a true freshman. Maybe he takes a huge step because he was a 5-star number 1 safety in the country and all that. Which is definitely possible. But it's like that would be like my biggest All-American candidate probably right there. Agree. I'm trying to think of somebody else. I mean, I think CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson are definitely both All-American talents.
Yeah. Maybe
but
Christian Miller.
I mean, and Christian Miller is a great player, and he's probably the most important returning player on the front 7. Maybe aside from Allen or Wilson, but like, you know, compared to last season, you know, there's no Michael Williams or Brock Bowers or any. I don't think there's a guy like that walking through that door. And, you know, that's something that every other fan base in the country is going to hear and go, "Oh, boo-hoo, you don't have another demigod this year."
That's fair. You don't have a generational talent on this.
Yeah, like it's like where's our generational talent? Like, it says a lot about Georgia football that, you know, that this is easily a team that has the talent to win. If you were in spring practice right now and you went every single day and you just had a bird's eye view, I guarantee you would walk away going, "That's a 10-win team at least." But the fact that you can even say that, like the fact that's what's being said about Georgia football, instead of like, "Oh wow, this is a Death Star playoff team," it's different. And I do agree. That's why I agree that like this. I don't think this is just coach speak from Kirby Smart. I think this is him being like, we've never had a team like this, you know.
Well, and then nationally, you can't see anyone who's ranking Georgia preseason lower than 5th. So it's kind of crazy that we're talking the way we're talking, and some people are like, "Yeah, I think Georgia's going to win it all this year." It's like, maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? In college sports, obviously, isn't like the NFL. Unproven guys, you know, come out of nowhere all the time.
Yeah.
And I wonder, you kind of said something about Monroe Freeling. I wonder if his absence is kind of opening the door for, you know, either Bo Hughley or Jaw Jackson to step in at one of those tackle spots.
Yeah, it's been. I tried really hard to get Michael Morris to name some more specific guys, because I led with I asked him about this, and I led with the Daniel Calhoun injury, so I was more talking about guard. But I mean, he said that, and I've heard Kirby say this too, that there are just so many guys in there competing. Yeah, I could totally see, like if I turned on week 1 against Marshall and I saw Josh Jackson starting, I would be like surprised, but it wouldn't like nothing at this point, would exactly have me floored. Like you never know.
I mean, just seeing that guy's basketball tape, that excites me. Like that dude's an athlete. No, what is he listed at? Is he listed at 6'10", 350? 6'9", 350?
If he's 6'10", that's like nuts. That's
it's stupid. He makes giant human beings look small over there on the sideline.
Yeah, he's 6'10", 348.
Yeah,
which is like insane. Like this is not similar at all. But like my dad sent me this clip today of Kevin Durant like doing a like he was lined up at like DN and he was trying to like beat a guy off the edge who was blocking, and like Kevin Durant is so like he's I think he's listed at 6'9",
freakishly tall.
He's really
he like says he's 6'9",
yeah,
but he is 6'11". It's
biggest
weird.
Open secret in basketball is Kevin Durant's actually like 7 feet. But like he's so tall and skinny that like he would be a horrible pass rusher or a horrible offensive lineman or whatever, because it's like he's too stiff and he's like a gingerbread man. So the fact that Josh Jackson is like that tall but is also just that built, like I don't get it, man. I don't get how that's a person that like exists. There are some people like
sure, and and Georgia's gotten a few guys like that, like Jordan Davis is. There's not many guys that are built like that. So that's one thing. So if we did turn on the first game of the season and Josh Jackson was starting, it would feel like this guy's made such huge strides to have taken this position from either Ernest Green or Monroe Freeling. Like it would have to excite me personally.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I want to make it clear, like I don't think that's going to happen. But like it would say a lot. I mean, I haven't heard anything super alarming from the offensive line. I don't know if you've seen anything, but I feel like the position groups that are really getting called out is like the safeties and then like the running backs. So I don't know. The offensive line is interesting this year. We'll have to see. I don't know how serious that Freeling injury is, but I know they love the guy. They love to just put him in at random drives last year, at random points in the game. So I assume he'll be starting at left, because I've heard I keep saying they're using Ernest Green at right tackle more this spring.
Okay.
Which I don't know how you feel about that, but maybe that's better for him. Because Ernest Green,
he was really good in 2024 and 2023. So I don't know. Maybe it's the injury. I haven't given up on him.
And I haven't either. But like, I mean, he's a super strong built kid. And he's a mauler. But maybe what he needs is a move to that right tackle spot where you're not protecting the blind side. You have more responsibilities as a run blocker. You get to push guys like a sled forward more than you have to, pull and have, like, I don't know.
Yeah, so, I could see that.
If they really are gonna just move him to right tackle, my guess would be that that's why, and they're gonna move Freeling to left, because I really don't think, like, as much as fun as it is for you and I to speculate, like if they're putting Ernest Green at right tackle, they're not putting a first-time starter at left tackle.
Yeah, that could be true. I feel like the offensive line is kind of just always the most important position on a team.
Yeah.
So I feel like the offensive line, it's funny we haven't even mentioned this yet. I feel like the offensive line determines the floor of the team. Like, I agree. With this schedule, it's like if it's bad, who knows how bad it could get.
Yeah. Because like you can have terrible skill positions, but if your offensive line is good, you're going to move the ball.
Exactly. And on that, like from that perspective, I think that it determining the ceiling of this team is the receiver room. And to hear good things about the receiver room and, Gunner and Zion Branch. We haven't mentioned Gunner either, who I guess we mentioned him a little bit, who appears to be the clear number one. But yeah, hearing that Zachariah Branch and Gunner have some good chemistry and hearing good things about Noah Thomas, like, I mean, I've said this just countless times on the podcast, but just 37 drops is just so many drops. It's like if you just cut it in half, if Georgia drops 19 passes last year, it's like who knows how many more points they score. So that receiver room is just that could be the biggest change in this team if if they drop 14 passes next year, I'm going to go absolutely nuts about these receivers.
Yeah. No, it could turn the entire team around without a doubt. I mean, there were so many plays last year where you just were like, catch the ball. Like, I think Kirby said the word that he used after the Texas game was he's like, it was comical, like how we couldn't catch the ball, or it was almost comical or something. And like, it really is crazy that you're trying to, that team was trying to win its third natty in 4 years, and all of a sudden nobody on the team could like catch the ball. Like,
yeah.
It was really cool.
It wasn't all Arian Smith either. It's like Arian Smith gets all the blame for it, and he had his fair share. But he was also the leading receiver and was the only one getting open all the time, making plays.
I mean, me personally, the guy that would frustrate me the most was Dominic Lovett, because, like you said, obviously Arian Smith, the drops are annoying, but yes, he was making huge plays. I mean, he was the leading receiver on the team, got open down the field. I mean, he was the only guy that they could really count on to like stretch the ball. He had that huge 3rd and 11 against Texas on the road.
Yeah.
But Lovett,
I always compare Arian Smith to like Adam Duvall. Are you a baseball guy? Compared to Adam Duvall,
I'm really trying to hear you out here.
So I compare him to Adam Duvall, having to play every day. Like, Adam Duvall is a platoon outfielder. It's your fault if you're having to play Adam Duvall every day. It's like Arian Smith is a specific skill set. He should be your 3rd, 4th best receiver. It's not Arian Smith's fault that he's your best receiver. It's your fault.
Exactly. That's a good comparison, because I mean, he like, not to sell Arian Smith short, because like he did improve a good bit as like a blocker and stuff, but like for the most part, he is a kind of situational football player. He's your deep threat. He's not your guy that you make your primary target on like every game. And it's like, I think who that guy was supposed to be was Dominic Lovett. I don't know if I've ever had more. I don't know if I've ever been more disappointed in a Georgia transfer player ever than Dominic Lovett. Just because I hate that it says like first spring scrimmage notes, and I'm just on here going on a Dominic Lovett rant. But it really did like there were so many. It feels like last season they kind of gave up on him as a route runner and as a guy who could create space for himself, because everything they ran was like bubble screens and hitches and little quick hitters designed to, I guess, get his rapport with Beck back. But like, he couldn't even catch those sometimes, and it was just like, he came up huge against Tech in the 4th quarter, so we'll give him credit for that. But for the most part, like, the receiving core was just such a net negative for the team last year. And it's like, I mean, I think their feelings about that group were made pretty clearly by how fast they went and got Noah Thomas and Zach Branch. That was like,
for sure. Especially for a guy who never got hurt or never had like an off the field thing, or it was 2 full years of Dominic Lovett, and he just, he didn't really make many plays, and he was a really good player at Missouri. So I'm not really sure what happened.
I mean, he was supposed to be that first round kind of guy out of the slot, the real like security blanket kind of guy for Beck, but it just didn't happen. It just never did. I like that they got like, I love the Noah Thomas edition for them, just because, I mean, last season too, their 2 ex receivers getting arrested and essentially dismissed from the team. I guess Colby Young is back now. I don't really understand what's going on with that, but they're trying to get size, they're trying to get explosiveness, and I think they're trying to get guys that aren't like, obviously, Noah Thomas is 6'6", but he's also a lot more explosive and a lot more fluid of an athlete than I think he gets credit for. And Branch is kind of the opposite. Like, Branch is super fast, but he's also, I think he's more quick than Arian Smith was, and is probably a better like intermediate route runner. So like, they're not getting guys that are like on paper aren't as much of like one trick ponies. And I hate to reduce Arian Smith and Dominic Lovett to that, because I do think they have, defined skill sets, but it just didn't really materialize the way I think it was supposed to at Georgia.
I'm not even sure what Dominic Lovett's one trick is, if we're being honest. Not that we're just, I don't want Dominic Lovett catching strays over here, but Arian Smith, at least, he could just run by somebody for a 50-yard touchdown at any point.
No, he's and honestly, he's stamped forever for that Ohio State touchdown. I think as many Georgia fans now want to be like, I hate Arian Smith, like whatever. Like when the dust settles, people are gonna remember that play. I think more than they remember this last season, which is why I don't have much ill will towards Arian Smith,
especially because like I think some people like fans of other teams might see that play and it's like, oh, a busted coverage for touchdown, that Georgia got real lucky, and it's like, no, he broke him off. Like he just straight broke the dude off and he fell. It's not like they forgot to guard him.
That was filthy, man. That was
and that was with what, like 5 minutes left. Like you had to score in like 20 seconds.
They were down by 2 scores when that happened. Like that was their one play touchdown that saved them, minutes of game time. And
I've always talked about the 2017 national championship, Georgia Alabama, that like Alabama, there's like 5 or 6, 7 different plays in that game that you're just like, if that play doesn't happen, we win the national championship. If that play doesn't happen, if it's the Tyler Simmons, if it's the
helmet interception that Jake Fromm threw, oh my God.
Oh, which one?
The pick that Jake Fromm threw, where
off the helmet,
and the guy caught it.
Yes, it's like there's so many different plays. Like I think they had a 4th down where Tua was just kind of scrambling, just threw it up to the end zone, and Calvin Ridley. There's like 4 or 5 different plays. You're like, if that one doesn't happen, we win the national championship. That's what that Ohio State game was. It was like, if that Brock Bowers first down doesn't happen, we don't win it. If that Arian Smith doesn't happen, we don't. The Javon Bullard play doesn't happen, like we probably don't win.
If David Daniel Sisavon does not tackle CJ Stroud at that exact spot, if Ohio State gets a single foot closer to field goal range, I think they make the kick.
I mean, even that, there's so many things. But yeah, that was we talked more than just the scrimmage, but it's your first time on the show. I gotta feel you out. What kind of Georgia fan are you? So we have freshmen that can make an impact. We can get to that next week. Let's move to our weekly.
It's Elijah Griffin.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of our weekly off-season 2025 position preview segment, this week we're moving to the defensive line, and we talked a little bit about the defensive line, how unproven this team is going into 2025. They allowed 129.7. I guess the whole team, to be fair, allowed 129.7 yards a game on the ground last year. But the defensive line is who I kind of think of when I'm thinking of run defense. And that was the most a Kirby Smart team has given up since 2018, when they gave up 134 yards a game. It's crazy because I thought that win at Texas was just so out of nowhere last year that all of a sudden it's like, this looks like the best defense in college football, and just absolutely just go on the road and just take care of business. In those 2 Texas games, Georgia allowed 60 yards rushing. Like, for whatever reason, Texas could not run the ball in Georgia. In the 5 games in between that, everyone was running on Georgia. Like it didn't make any sense. They had 5 straight 100-yard games there before the SEC championship. Georgia Tech went for 260. UMass went for 226.
That UMass game, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a weird one. And I kind of, it is UMass, so I let it slide. Like, you don't get up for UMass like you do other games. It's like Georgia Tech. This was like Friday night prime time. Like, there was a big time atmosphere, and they're just running the ball on Georgia. It's like, okay, this is something. But yeah, so this defensive line, I think the defense gets kind of a pass a little bit last year. Like, so much of the hate on this team a year ago was on the offense. Of course, everyone hated on Carson Beck. It was not just him on the offense for sure. But the defense just really wasn't elite like they usually are, and they had their performances here and there, the 2 Texas games and the Clemson game, but there weren't a lot of great defensive performances a year ago. You lose Nazir Stackhouse, you lose Warren Brinson, Michael Williams, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. I think Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is the one I'm like the most bummed about. Like, obviously, Michael Williams, like, he's a 3-year guy. He's going to the NFL. He's obviously the best one on the defensive line that left. But I feel like Ingram Dawkins that has injuries here and there, I feel like he still had like maybe not a superstar year, but I feel like he had like a great year in him that like if he came back in 2025, this defensive line could have been like pretty sick.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like he definitely had the most upside of anybody on that group last year. I think he's definitely going to be the best pro out of that bunch just because like what he can do as a interior pass rusher is kind of insane. How quick his feet are, just I mean the natural burst that he has, it's crazy. I mean it's really something that there are a lot of linemen are just too slow for that. And like I think we're starting to see, like you said, like what he could really be. Early in the season, he had a bunch of really good games. Like I think his Auburn game was one that I remember him like making a bunch of plays in. So yeah, I would have liked to see him come back for another year for sure. Just because like he's a really talented player, a really cool player. I love when there's interior pass rushers who have that kind of juice. And like I think he's going to go on to be a much better pro than he was at Georgia. Because yeah, I agree. I mean, he was a 5-star for a reason. He's got unreal athletic qualities that I don't really know if there's no guy on this year's defensive front with that kind of athletic profile for sure.
So am I to understand you that you think Ingram Dawkins will be better than Mykel Williams in the NFL?
Oh, no. I think he will be better than in the NFL. Okay. He will be a better NFL player than he was as a college player.
Okay. I just wanted
but I also think about Mykel Williams. Like,
yeah, I could definitely see that.
I think some people are writing off Mykel Williams because he doesn't have, a lot of sack production, but like nobody who went to Georgia has any sack production because they rotate their edges so much. So if Mykel Williams becomes a 15 sack a year guy in the NFL, I will not be surprised one bit.
Yeah, and you even see Chaz Chambliss, like not big sack numbers, and then you see some of these videos of him where he just blows up like a pulling guard or something. You're like, okay, that's what he's supposed to be doing. He's doing his job. He's a little smarter than me, who's just looking at sack numbers.
Well, and you'll see a video of him like lifting up a car, and you're just like, oh my god, like this was like their 4th pass rusher last year. Like,
yeah, they and I mean Trayvon Walker was a guy who went number 1 overall without big sack numbers. The NFL knows what they're looking at when it comes to those guys' tape.
He went number 1.
Yeah, what even like 3rd team All SEC? I don't think it was. First overall pick of the draft.
Great NFL player too. Yeah, shout out to Trayvon.
Sure. They also lost Jamal Jarrett, transferred to USC. Although the last defensive line that transferred to USC, we didn't miss him that much.
No. Yeah. That one, Jamal Jarrett just never really got his Georgia career off the ground.
Yeah.
Just kind of think it's funny that I don't mean to belittle Jamal Jarrett. I'm sure he's probably a nice guy. Well, actually, I don't know. I've heard some things that he's actually not. But USC is was a funny place for him to end up for sure.
Yeah. We'll leave it there. So when I look at 2025 and what the depth chart's going to look like, I feel like we're going to rely a lot on the 2024 class. So before we get to the 2024 class, I feel like Christian Miller and Xavier McLeod are really the only proven guys on this whole group. And Xavier McLeod, I feel like I was really impressed with him near the end of the season. I feel like he had a couple games where he really played well. But Christian Miller, like we were kind of saying before, like if there's kind of a couple candidates that like if they became an All-American this year, it wouldn't shock you. I feel like Christian Miller is one of those. But I mean, it's reaching. It's a guy who's having a way better year than anything he's done to this point. But he's the one I guess the most excited about. Not that I'm expecting him to be an All-American.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I expect him to be a All-American either, but I do expect him to be the saving grace of the interior defensive line. I mean, he's honestly kind of I was just talking about how there's, nobody on the team has the same athletic profile as Ingram Dawkins does. And I don't think anyone does, but I do think he might come the closest in terms of like the combination of speed and power that he has. I think it's going to be really cool to get to see him kind of lead this group this year. He's going to be unleashed at, I think, a level he hasn't really been at. Excuse me. He's been a rotational guy for most of his career, but he's a really talented pass rusher, man. And big kid, can stuff the run too. Like, I assume they'll kind of move him between nose and 3-tech a little bit, like I know they like to do sometimes. But yeah, I agree. If anyone in all the defensive line is going to have an All-American caliber year, it's going to be him. And even if he doesn't, I think he's going to be a very good player this year, regardless of what it looks like, if he stays healthy.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Ingram Dawkins, because I feel like the exact same about Christian Miller and Ingram Dawkins, that Christian Miller through 3 years, I feel like he's a good player, but he hasn't really been unleashed. Like, he's kind of had some injuries. He's kind of just been a rotational guy. Getting his year starting, I think he could have a big year. And I was hoping Ingram Dawkins could do the same. But the 2024 guys I'm talking about, we have Jordan Hall, of course, in 2023 that, everyone loves, everyone's hyping up. Like, this guy should be a difference maker, but he just can't stay healthy through his first 2 years on campus. So we still haven't seen it, but I feel like everyone's confident that he does have it. Do you have anything about Jordan Hall?
Yeah, I mean, he's just battled so many injuries. So I agree. I think we just don't really kind of know yet. But that's a guy that people from around the team have spoken highly of. So I think that's just going to be one of those guys where you just kind of have to wait and see, because he hasn't really, we haven't seen him a lot yet, but I know, I mean, he's stuck around for a while at this point, and they do seem to like him. He could,
for sure.
He might be the biggest, like him and like, on the interior, he probably is the biggest like X factor as far as like, this is a mystery player. Like
if we get to see this guy
going to be,
Yeah. It could even be a boat. But we've seen, like, if we get to see Jordan Hall like reach what his potential was, coming out like a top 5, top 10 player coming out of high school, it's definitely an X factor for this defensive line. But in terms of the 2024 guys, I think either Joseph Jonah-Ajonye, Jordan Thomas, or Nasir Johnson, I think one, if not multiple of those guys have to be impact players this year. Like Joseph Jonah-Ajonye, pretty much just as big time as Jordan Hall. Like, dude, 5-star coming out. Like, Georgia needs him to be an impact player, I think, in 2024. But I'm also, Jordan Thomas is one of the few that's coming back that's actually gotten on the field. I think he played like 3 games last year.
Yeah, he did.
And he was a big time recruiter as well. So which of those guys are you most excited about?
Probably Joseph Jonah-Ajonye, honestly, just because like you said, I mean, that's the guy that I've been hearing about for the longest. That's the guy who, was a 5-star, I think top 5-10 player at his position. But that's another one who, has been dealing with a bunch of injuries pretty much since he arrived in Athens. And I think the feeling about him is also like he might not be ready just yet because of how much time that he's had to miss. But like, they also know that he has the gifts, and there's a couple guys on the defensive line that are like that. But I think that's definitely the guy that I'm the most intrigued by personally.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just the upside just seems through the roof. And like we're talking about, like, this is the most unproven Georgia team like we can think of, like, and other fan bases are going to say, oh, boo-hoo, because you have Jordan Hall, a former 5-star who you haven't seen really play yet. Joseph Jonah-Ajonye, former 5-star, hasn't really played yet. And then who some people call the next Jalen Carter, Warren Brinson at least called the next Jalen Carter, Elijah Griffin, true freshman in this class, former 5-star that's yet to play. Man. So it's like, might be unproven, but we're unproven a bunch of 4 or 5-star players.
Yeah, exactly. It's like any other team would kill to have unproven guys with these pedigrees. Elijah Griffin, man. Oh my goodness. That kid is already like a folk hero. Like I've already heard like
right? What have you heard?
I've already seen like articles with like players telling like anecdotes about him and stuff, and he's like 18. Like Warren Brinson told that story. I think it was Warren Brinson actually. I went to the pro day a couple weeks ago, and they asked somebody. It was either him or Nazir Stackhouse about Elijah Griffin, and his eyes just kind of went like that. Like you can tell, like these are football players who have been around other Georgia football players who have been around other freaks of nature for a while now, at least a few past few years. Some of them since high school, probably some of those IMG kids, and they're still talking about Elijah Griffin like this, like he's like the 1% of the 1% of athletes. So like that might be the most excited. I think I'm probably more excited about him than any other newcomer on this whole team. I don't know how much he'll actually play as a freshman because defensive line is a tough position to just come in and play as a freshman, obviously. But like every year, these Kirby Smart teams have a couple, and I know you said we'll talk about this next week, so I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. But every year, these Kirby Smart teams have a couple of freshmen that stand out, and I think he might be my most likely candidate.
Yeah, and the thing about most of those teams is they're usually not relying on the freshmen. It's just it's going to be just on paper a really good team, and then all of a sudden a freshman steps in and turns it into a great team or something. Brock Bowers, who that's without Brock Bowers, 2021 is probably a pretty damn good team. With Brock Bowers, they're a championship team. Malachi Starks or somebody.
Darnell Washington would have had so many touchdowns.
Yeah, so it's
should have got my boy more red zone touches, man.
he definitely. What do you end up like 2 or 3 career touchdowns?
He had a couple. Yeah, he had a couple.
Yeah. No, that's true. But I'm afraid we might be relying a little more on freshmen this year than most years.
I think so.
But yeah, I think the D line, like we've said, there's some question marks, but Georgia's got a lot better question marks than a lot of other teams in the country are dealing with.
It's a fair assessment.
But let's go with our last little segment here. This is just for fun because I got to feel you out. I'm a little bit older than you. So I don't know where your fan base, where your fandom truly starts. So I thought it'd be cool if we did our top 5 Georgia regular season wins of our fandom, of the history of our fandom. I always say, so just to date myself, born in 90. I always say I was a Georgia fan since 01. Like Champ Bailey's one of my favorite players ever. So like I knew of Georgia obviously before 01. Everything. I was raised this way. But 01 is like the year I just start remembering everything. First year of Mark Richt. I'm really dialed in. What was I, 11 years old at that point? I had no worries in the world. 11, 12, 13 years old. Just Georgia football. So I'll start from number 5. Number 5 on my list, regular season wins, because the SEC championships, the playoffs, those are the easy ones. The Rose Bowl, the Peach Bowl versus Ohio State. Number 5, I'm going with let's first of all, do you have any honorable mentions before we get to the list?
Okay. The only one that I was gonna have as an honorable mention, and it's because I don't remember like watching the full 60 minutes of this game. Okay. Because I was 5 when it was played, but the 2007 blackout against Auburn. That is one that I just remember hearing about my whole life, and then like I remember going on YouTube and like looking at the videos of like the players running out in the black jerseys and seeing the fans freaking out and being like that looks sick. Like that game, and the fact that game happened is probably a big part of the reason that I like wanted to like go here. Like,
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that game definitely made my list. It's funny. I actually kind of along those same. I was not 5, so I was around, but I didn't see it live, so I couldn't put it on. Was the 2002 Auburn game with Michael Johnson's catch to move Georgia to the SEC championship. We were at a high school basketball game, so I just heard about it after like someone went nuts. It was like Georgia won. But I didn't actually witness it, so I feel like I couldn't actually put it in my list. My honorable mention, I had actually Texas from this past year. It was an honorable mention.
Okay.
2013 LSU, honorable mention. Any win over Florida is an honorable mention for me. But number 5 on my list is, like you just said, sir, it's 2007 Auburn. That game was just incredible. Just the vibes, the black jerseys and everything. And then just like how it changed the season, just in terms of, I guess that would have been after the Florida game. So Georgia already had some juice. No Sean Marino, Thomas Brown going nuts. Thomas Brown, one of kind of my first like Georgia players I loved. And then no Sean and Stafford. That team was just amazing. So yeah, 07 Auburn. That is number 5 on my list.
All right. I will start with I was up until the last second. I was like trying to figure out my order for this. My number 5 is going to be 2017 against Florida. Georgia won 42-7. It was awesome. I think Georgia had lost I think they beat Florida in 2012, and then I think they lost.
So they were coming on. So 2017 would have been after 3 straight for Florida.
Yeah. I think that's what it was. And I mean, like you said, any win over Florida is a great one. I'm not gonna like sit here and like I hate Florida more than I think like any other team or like across pro, college, whatever. It's my favorite thing that happens and is when Florida loses, especially to Georgia. So to watch Georgia go out there and just beat them 42-7 on their way to a national championship appearance, I think that was the game where, and maybe not that was the game, because I have another game from this regular season on here too. But that really might have been the game where I was like, no, this team is like awesome. This team.
Yeah, I'm with you. That one almost made my list because of just the intangible reason. That's actually, I was thinking we'd do that next week to name our biggest rivals. Because the age difference a little bit. But I think it sounds like we're going to agree on our number 1 rival for sure. But yeah, the 2017, because you had Georgia. I remember me and my brother talking about it, like, because I mean, I'm a kid of the 90s, like 91 to 06, Georgia won twice. So we didn't experience many wins. And then right after that, they won a bunch more. They won a few more in a row. So to win 3 straight 11, 12, 13, like was massive, but it also felt like it took absolutely everything of like Georgia, the fiber of Georgia's being to win those games versus Florida. And for some teams that weren't even that good, 2012 was good, but 11 and 13 weren't even good Florida teams.
No, they weren't.
2017 is like, okay, we are absolutely smashing this team. They did this to us so many times. This is finally the one where we're just going to destroy them.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Number 4, I got to go with the hobnail boot game. 2001 Tennessee. It's weird because that game, I don't know if you obviously probably don't remember the game, but I'm sure you've seen highlights and everything.
I know about it.
Know of it for sure, because they were already putting the stats on the screen of like, this is Georgia's first win in Knoxville in like 30 years or 20 years, maybe since 1980, I want to say. Like his first year, or maybe 82. And then they threw that 50, 60-yard screen pass to Travis Stevens. So it's like, oh wait, shit, Georgia's going to lose this game. Like, yeah. And then David Green takes him down the field, and the hobnail boot, Larry Munson's iconic call. That had to be top 5 for me.
Yeah, you got to have that one. That's one of the ones that I was educated on as a young child, growing up in an all Georgia household.
There you go. What's your number 4?
So it was one that you had as an honorable mention. I'm going to go with 2013 versus LSU. I was pretty young for this game. I was in like 5th grade, but like this is the first big win that I really remember like watching and like somewhat comprehending. I'm not gonna act like I was some ball knower at 10 years old. I obviously wasn't.
Yeah.
But like the first Georgia game that I remember really getting super invested in was the year before that, the SEC championship against Alabama. That lost in the last second play. I was like 9 when that happened. But this game, I just remember like felt like the fate of the universe was on the line. I mean, the fact that this was one of my introductions to really watching college football as a kid, was like super dope. I mean, it was a classic SEC 3:30 shootout. You have NFL players on both sides. I think Todd Gurley left that game early, but you have Aaron Murray, Keith Marshall, Chris Conley, like a bunch of dudes, Leonard Floyd, and then LSU that year had an NFL team. It was Odell and Jarvis at wideout, Jeremy Hill running back, Georgia legend Zach Mettenberger.
And the storyline of Mettenberger coming back to Athens too. Like college game day in the house.
Yeah, like that whole game was just so crazy. And the way it ended with the touchdown to Justin Scott Wesley at the end and everything, like I think that's just one of the most entertaining games ever played in this sport. And the fact that it was a Georgia win and I got to watch it was pretty awesome. Also, I think one of the coolest crowds you'll ever see is from that game. So yeah,
that was definitely a huge one. Especially, I will say, it was the second big win of the season, though, sir. So have some respect on that 2013 team, because that's why that year was so frustrating. Because Clemson, South Carolina, and LSU were all preseason top 10 that year, and it was 3 of the first 4 games of the season. So that LSU win after you beaten South Carolina a couple of weeks before that, to beat LSU and start 3-1 with that ridiculous schedule, and we lost so much of the defense, it was like, okay, maybe this team can just win with offense this year. And then every single offensive playmaker got injured that year.
I forget how nice South Carolina was that year. That was Connor Shaw and like Mike Davis, Clowney, and then that was a really
they were a top 10 team. That was another Justin Scott Wesley.
That was a really good team. I just forget how good they were.
Yeah, and Justin Scott Wesley had the long touchdown in that one too. And I remember Mark Richt, because Mark Richt and Aaron Murray like embodied each other. Like a lot of Georgia fans don't want to talk about how they hated on Aaron Murray for 3 years and just kind of sweep that under the rug. But they definitely, I heard them loud and clear. Maybe the best quarterback that ever played at Georgia. They just hated on him for like 3 years. So that LSU game, I think that's one of Mark Richt's like crying in the post game. And it was just like, it was such a massive win. Georgia always seemed to lose when they were on game day too. So it was like, that was just a massive win all around.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Number 3, I got to go 2021 Clemson, because that was just, man, I started to notice a trend with my list. Once we get done, I can talk about it, but the defensive performance was just a lot of games that are like the most fun games to rewatch, or those games where, they score like 40 points on offense or something. Happens. But yeah, to just watch a defensive performance of, it was like 8 sacks. They just never score. The defense gets a pick 6. It was just, that game. And obviously just being that what that team ended up being. And what Clemson was to that point. I mean, that was literally like a changing of the guard in college football. Georgia dethroning Clemson and putting themselves in that top group in the sport.
Yeah, that was awesome. That game was actually my first game as a student at Georgia. I was not there, but like I remember, I watched it with a couple of buddies and everything. But like, yeah, I remember there's like that game being 3v5, and then like you said, obviously what that Georgia team turned out to be versus that game was kind of the last, like, I mean, Clemson made the playoffs this year, but that was the last that until then, that was Clemson kind of went away for a while, as you know.
Yeah, is that the last time they were a top 5 team?
Yeah, and like I just remember being like, that game. That's the only thing. You had Brock Bowers kind of breaking out of that game, being like, man, they sure do throw it to 19 a lot. That Chris Smith pick 6 was, the only play that happened like the entire time. Like, that was a fantastic introduction to the 2021 Georgia team. And it's weird to go back and rewatch it, because I don't know about you, but I honestly, every single time I go back and rewatch it, I forget that JT Daniels started that game. I'm like, that's JT Daniels.
Yeah, it is. It is very weird. I remember Brandon Adams that off season who ended up looking like a genius, because they asked Todd Monken about Eric Gilbert when he transferred to Georgia, and he was like, yeah, he's kind of like a Brock Bowers type. And people were like, a Brock Bowers type? We've already seen this guy play. Does he already know how good Brock Bowers is? And apparently Todd Monken did already know how good Brock Bowers was in the spring before he ever played a game. But yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, he got like the first 2 or 3 catches of the game. We're like, wait, what's happening? Is the tight end the best player on our team?
Dude.
It turns out he was. Okay, what's number 3 on your list?
All right, number 3 on my list. I flipped this one. I had this one at 5, but I moved it before this. Also from the 2017 season. I'm gonna go with the Notre Dame game.
That's a good call. I honestly forgot. That's definitely an honorable mention. I honestly forgot about that one.
And I know Georgia fans like the 2019 one better because it was in Athens and it was this electric environment. And that's I totally get that. And that was
better for the university and the community and all that.
Yeah, and like that was also a really good game. But I don't think there was anything like watching them run out there in South Bend and seeing touchdown Jesus and playing against the Golden Domers. Like, I mean, and in a lot of ways too, I think that was the game where you kind of realized that Jake Fromm, had a little something, like that was where you kind of realized like, wait, this freshman, like you can win with him. So many iconic moments in that game. You have the Terry Godwin catch. You have Davin Bellamy sacking Brandon Wimbush at the end, forcing a fumble to win it. I mean, like that's not a game. I just remember my dad and my parents after that game kept saying like, that's not a game Georgia like would ever win. In recent years, coming off of the Mark Richt era, especially. I think that was one of the first. That might have been the first real like signature win of Kirby Smart's career, unless I'm just forgetting one. But like that was a huge one, man.
It meant the most because
like Auburn the year before that, maybe.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. But that one actually meant something. Like it was a season. Like that was just like a nice little. Hey, we're building something here. Year one.
They already lost 5 games by then. But Notre Dame was like, hey, we have a team. Like, yeah.
That's a good call. That should definitely have been on my honorable mention list. Number 2, I'm gonna go with 2022 Tennessee because. As I've noticed on my list, I love games that we just get after the quarterback, man. It's the defensive performance in that game also. Just Jalen Carter, Javon Bullard just sacking Hendon Hooker on like the same play like 4 times in a row or something. I'm not really sure how many sacks Javon Bullard ended up at. Javon Bullard is one of my all-time favorite Georgia players, especially when he was in the Star. That Tennessee game was just incredible. Like some of the best like moments. Stetson, with that first touchdown and the fans calling him or whatever. Jalen Carter with the worst call in like the history of sports.
Yeah,
oh my God. I don't know what happened there, but it set up Lad McConkey's touchdown the first play of the next drive. So it's all good. We all saw it. We all saw Jalen Carter single-handedly dominate their O-line. So yeah, I gotta go. I think the only number 1 versus number 2 game, or number 1 versus number 1 game, because I think it was number 1 AP team versus number 1 playoff team.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be number 2, or that's got to be up there on the list.
Yeah. I think you said you had this as honorable mention, but my number 2 is this season at Texas.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. I think you put it pretty good earlier when we were talking about this game. It's like that win just came out of nowhere. It didn't feel like a win that they were going to get at all. They had pretty bad performances against like Kentucky and the like. And also, so my top, this is the only game that I have on here that I was actually in the press box for Red and Black stuff. I was thinking about putting Georgia Tech on here too, but I didn't want to have 2 games on here that was like I was there for. So like I was in the press box for. So I just put 1. This game was sick. I mean, 7 sacks in the first half. Being there in the press box, looking down and seeing the fans throwing water bottles and realizing what was going on in real time, like I'll never forget that. I'll never forget.
I was at the Braves infield fly game back in 2012. I did experience other fans throwing stuff on the field.
Too close, yeah. Like, and then like I'll never forget like hearing the crowd go crazy when Arch Manning comes in, thinking that they were about to make some miracle comeback. Of course, that all immediately gets shut down. I think another strip sack happened like right after that.
Yeah.
But that was as much of a
we all clinched up a little bit when Arch Manning.
For sure. I've seen Tua Tagovailoa and what he's capable of. But yeah, like that game was just super cool. I mean, I got to go on the field with a few minutes left, and I got to stand right in front of Bevo. Like, there were just so many moments that I'll cherish for the rest of my life from that game. So that's my number 2.
All right, good stuff. Number 1 on my list, I got to go 2007 Florida, because nothing is better than beating Tim Tebow and the Gators. So I'm a certified Gator hater, sir. And just sandwiched in between 2 championship years, 06 and 08 for Florida. Like, I just remember Marcus Howard and Georgia sacked Tebow like 7 times. Gary Danielson would have told you it was because of his hurt non-throwing shoulder coming into the game, but I don't want to hear any of that, Gary. Shout out to Gary Danielson, who's gonna be going his last season. But 2007 Florida, nothing is better than beating Florida as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, man.
And just the electricity, no Sean's like breakout game. That was just an amazing game.
That was the Gator stomp, right?
Yeah, I didn't even name that.
That's like the greatest moment in Georgia football history. Is like Mark Richt telling them to do that is like. So still, I feel like so out of character for Mark Richt that like I love that so much that he did that.
It was because the week before they'd beaten Vanderbilt either in overtime or like with like a last second field goal, and so it was like this team is limping in. And I think the biggest thing was that Georgia seemed legitimately scared of Florida. Like they just played like their worst game. Like those Ron Zook teams weren't any good, but somehow Florida, I think he won like 2 out of 3 versus Georgia. Yeah. Like just Georgia made such uncharacteristic mistakes against Florida. Terrence Edwards drop in 02. Like there's just so many like dumb things they did. And it was like the 07 game was Rick being like, we're not fucking scared of these guys. All right. We're going to come out and play. We're going to punch them in the mouth and like, let's see what happens. I could have been at that game also, but I didn't want to go with one of my friends who was a Florida fan and his family. I don't know. It would have been, it's like my number. It's literally my number 1 game, and I could have been there for free as a 17-year-old. But it was still had a good time at the house.
Oh yeah.
What's your number 1?
You already said it, but it's 2022 Tennessee.
Okay.
This is the only game that I was there for as a student. I won't say like a lot that you already said, but like. All I'll say about that game, because we've already kind of been over it, is like when it started raining, the like hushed intensity that fell over the crowd, like it's probably what being in like the Colosseum in Rome felt like in the ancient ages. Like that's what it felt. It felt like you were like watching like gladiators fight. Like it was insane. It's the best sports atmosphere I've ever been in my entire life. The fact that I got to be a student here when it happened, the fact that like I got to go, it was awesome. It was, I mean, the beating the number 1 team in the country, reclaiming Georgia's spot as the number 1 team in the country, like that was really special. And it was an awesome game. Shout out to Stetson Bennett, man.
Yeah, that's great stuff. It really doesn't get bigger than number 1 versus number 1, and in between the hedges as well. And the rain. That's the only reason Georgia won that game. Tennessee would have won if not for that rain. That's what I heard on Twitter.
That's what everyone was saying.
So yeah, next week we'll have to hit who our biggest rivals are. See if there's any generational difference there, and some of the impact freshmen, as well as we'll get into the edge rusher position. We got into the D line position this week. So a bunch of stuff to look forward to next week. Bo, excellent first episode, sir.
Thank you,
I appreciate you joining. This is going to be a lot of fun. Please, for those watching, thanks for tuning in live. Oh wait, shoot, we got a comment here. Jackson Johnson, appreciate you chiming in here. Tell your friends and family and the cashiers at Publix about the magic that Matt and Bo will bring on Bulldogs Live Tuesday nights on the Georgia Voice of College Football. Well said, Jackson. Couldn't have said it better myself. So please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, go Dogs.
Oof.